Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.
Welcome to this episode of The How of Business. This is Henry Lopez, and my guest today is Vicky Brown. Vicky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Looking forward to it. We're going to dive into the secrets of building and sustaining a high-performance team. You know, I've had a chance in my career and in life to be part of high-performance teams, so I know what it feels like to be part of one. We're going to get some insights from Vicky, who's an expert on this topic of how do we attract that? How do we build them? How do we keep high-performance teams? Vicky is the founder, and let me see if I get this right off the bat, Idomeneo, which is the name of her business. An interesting name. We're going to find out the story behind that name. But she leads Idomeneo is a leading HR consultancy business, helping business owners develop strong and engaged teams. We're also going to hear her very interesting entrepreneurial journey. So that's what we're going to explore on this episode. You can find all of the How of Business resources, including the show notes page for this episode. There's going to be a link there to a special download that Vicky is offering. So be sure to go to the show notes page. And also to learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs, just go to thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to consider supporting this show on Patreon and subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any future episodes. Let me tell you a little bit more about Vicky. Vicky Brown. Her passion is for helping entrepreneurs, and it's rooted in her own entrepreneurial journey that we're going to explore. After 2 decades of leadership roles in the corporate world, Vicky founded her own HR consultancy, Idomeneo Enterprises, in 2001. So she's been at it for quite some time, very successfully. She's faced with countless questions and challenges, Vicky is, on realizing how valuable a step-by-step guide would be. That's initially what she was faced with, and that was part of what led her to start her firm. And so from those experiences, she developed a vision to offer comprehensive, accessible HR guidance and educational resources for small and medium-sized business. And, the educational programs specifically are designed to equip entrepreneurs and small business owners like us with the tools, the guidance, and the confidence to navigate the sometimes complex world of HR. She's the host of her own show, More Human, More Resources, HR for Entrepreneurs, great podcast, and the author of the book, Sing with Your Opera Voice, My Journey from Solopreneur to Entrepreneur. So we're going to explore that a little bit as well. Fun fact, as she likes to share, she's also a #1 best-selling author and a former opera singer. So I just alluded to that. Vicky lives in West Hollywood. Everything is good right now with the fires, which is great. We're just chatting about that before we started recording. So Vicky Brown, once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
My pleasure. All right, let's start with a brief summary of your early days. What did you study in university?
I studied music, actually.
Figures.
I was going to sing, and of course, my mother is like, you have to have a real job. So I studied music education. So I actually have a teaching credential as well.
Wow. And this passion for opera, when do you recall that it developed for you?
You know, I think I was singing before I could speak, but as far as opera is concerned, weirdly, I wasn't, even though I studied it in college, I wasn't particularly into opera until I actually auditioned and got into the opera company. So it came from the job.
Were you a trained opera singer at that point in time? You were, okay.
Yes, I was, because in school, that's what we studied. But mostly I'm a lyric soprano. So even though I sound like a contralto, but I'm a lyric soprano. And so most of my music, kind of my sweet spot, were liturgical music. So Mozart, Handel, Haydn, things like that.
Interesting. Very interesting. I know very little about opera, but I have a first cousin, who was an opera singer for a while, lived in Italy for some time. He then retired as a school teacher as well. And then a very good friend of mine, his son is an opera and musical conductor. Yeah. So
wonderful.
I've been exposed to it that way. So then you ended up though going the corporate route anyway. What happened there? Why did you decide to go into the corporate world?
everything in my life has kind of been a little bit of an examination in overlapping. So when I was studying in school, I realized that teaching is one of the most difficult jobs in the world. And also, being a music teacher and singing for a living, very difficult. You use your
Mm.
instrument all day long. So you're demonstrating to the kids all day. You really can use up your instrument. And so while I was in school, I was actually working in the business world
Wow.
and continued to do that when I was done with school. And, I was an executive assistant. And from that, I found my way to actually HBO in the very, very, very early
Wow.
days. We weren't even making movies
Was
at
that
that
even like
time.
before 24? Because I used to sell door to door HBO subscription before it was even 24 hours. So I'm
Really? Oh
dating
my
myself
goodness.
as well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We were involved at the same time.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
and I was the executive assistant to the head of the LA office, and it was basically a sales only office. So when new people came in, corporate in New York said, California is weird. We have no idea how to handle it as far as HR is concerned. So you figure out, you're the executive assistant to the top guy. So when someone new starts, you're in charge of the paperwork.
Wow.
And that is how I kind of found my way to HR, which is
Interesting.
everything is overlapping. They gave me the card of their labor attorney and said, figure it out.
Go figure it out.
Exactly. I called him and learned almost everything I know about HR at his knee. And to this day, he is the labor counsel for Idomeneo. So, and
Wow.
that was 1,000 years ago.
Amazing. It speaks to your ability to build and maintain relationships. What was it that then appealed to you about the arena of HR?
It is, it's interesting because a lot of musicians end up doing things that are very detailed minded
Mm.
because music is math. So I love the detail, I love the compliance piece. Most of the time, when people think about HR, they say, oh, you're a people person, and so you're going to plan parties and things like that. But I was attracted to the science of HR. I certainly enjoy human beings as well, but I was attracted to really the science of HR and the detail and the specificity of it. So,
So did that make you good, I suspect, from an early days at making sure you've had the systems in place, the tools, all of those types of things?
exactly. I am a systems wonk. If there's anything going on, I'm going to put together a project management plan for it. So absolutely,
Got it.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then, of course, growing up and doing this in California, where there are a lot of specific laws and regulations that you have to be familiar with and you have to
Mm-hmm.
adhere to. So there's a lot there to make sure you administer. Um, so did you have aspirations early on to become your own boss?
Zero, none whatsoever. I was, I kind of worked my way up in corporate, became pretty much the head of the various departments of the companies I was working in HR. And my last corporate gig was for a startup at that time. We actually ended up being about 3 years old, 2 years old when we had to close down. But it was a tech-based financial services company,
Mm.
and we got caught in the bubble in
Hmm.
2000. So
But it must have given you a little bit of a taste of what a startup feels like, right? The good, bad, and the
absolutely,
ugly. Yeah.
absolutely, I was something like employee number 11 or something.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that whole creating it yourself from the very beginning, very appealing to me.
I see.
The other jobs I had gone in and kind of reformatted everything from the ground up. But to really, set it with your vision, I love that part.
Yeah.
Um,
So is that partly then what begins to trigger, I want to do my own thing?
Again, absolutely not.
Interesting.
I was pressed into
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
The head of the company, when we closed in 2001, actually, we closed in Feb of 2001. And he said to me, the president said, you should really think about having your own HR company. It'll be a great gig for you. You're really good at it. You created something from nothing. That's what an entrepreneur does. And I was like, that's a great idea. Absolutely
Mm.
not. And he's like, why
Why?
not?
Why? What was your fear?
And I said, because I'm a great number two. My entire career, I had been the one who sits on the shoulder of the CEO, and I hear their confessions and I whisper in their ear, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? We're having a culture issue over here, that kind of thing. And it's a really, really comfortable role for me. So being number one wasn't even on my radar. So I
Hmm.
said, thank you. It sounds really interesting, but no, gonna go get a job. See ya.
Interesting, because as I got to think though, as a singer, especially an opera singer, you're very comfortable being number one in that arena. Is that
Mhm.
fair?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Listen, I tell people I was, I was born this way. I'm an only child. I'm a Leo, and I'm a
Yeah,
soprano.
you're a
So,
diva, yeah, or
absolutely.
potential to be a diva anyway.
Exactly. But in the business world, I really appreciated being that person, that confidant for the CEO. Now, this was many years ago. I still appreciate that role, but I have to say, doing this role is the best thing I've ever done.
So, what triggered it? What then made you overcome that resistance and decide to do
He tricked me into it.
it?
He said, I have a new gig and I have a team that's in New York. I'm not moving from California. And I know that they need like handbooks and things because you taught me that. So
I
can
see.
you take care of that? And
On a
I can't.
contract basis, in other words, he didn't want to hire
Exactly.
you. He wanted to outsource that to you.
Absolutely. And so I helped him out with a couple of things, and a couple of things became four things, and then became six things, and then became eight things. And by August of 2001, my compliance gene kicked in. And I called him and
Mm.
said, listen, I have access to confidential information for your employees. I need a corporate veil. You need
Hmm.
a contract. We need to spell this out, all of that. And he's
Hmm.
like, okay. So I incorporated. They became our first client, and they were a client for almost 10 years.
Wow, one of your first seed clients.
Mhm.
Was it called Idomeneo back then?
At the very beginning, yep.
And
Idomeneo from the inception.
so we were talking about it before we started recording, but tell us again, where does that name come from?
It's the name of an opera by Mozart. It has one of my favorite arias in it. But I actually picked it kind of by pulling it out of a hat. I
Okay,
was going to a conference. This was before I incorporated. I was going to a conference and they asked for your name and your company name. And I was
interesting.
like,
It
and
just popped into your
I
head.
saw the score. It was sitting in my practice room. And I saw the score and I was like, okay, I love Greek mythology and I love opera. Okay, Idomeneo. And that's actually how I chose it.
That's
And then I'm
wild,
so stubborn about it that
right?
it's difficult to say, it's difficult to spell, all of that. And in the early days, we used our entire name as our
Mm.
URL and our email. So everybody was spelling idomeneoenterprises.com over and over again. But marketing people say to me, so about that name, what do you think? And I'm like, nope. I just say Adidas and I keep going.
Yep, you've
It
built a brand
actually,
around it now, and it's if
absolutely.
nothing else, it's a conversation point, right? It's an icebreaker.
Hmm.
And there's a story there, so I love that. Yeah.
And it really helps me because when I've been singing for a long time, and I was singing a long time into my business career as well. And there is something so refreshing about having left brain, right brain things happening.
Mm,
So if there's a problem in the office and I'm sitting on stage waiting to sing, inevitably it kind of gets worked out in the background of my
interesting.
brain, and vice
Interesting.
versa. I can go to work when I'm stressing out about auditioning. So so it really is a release valve on both
Very
sides.
interesting. Do you still sing professionally or even
I
just
do
for
not.
fun, I'm assuming?
I went on a 1 year hiatus about 8 years ago. So
And it's been 8 years. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Got it. A lot of times, though, people who come from a creative background miss that, but I feel that business is a creative endeavor. But how do you look at it?
I absolutely agree.
Mm.
When I was singing full time, and the reason I actually took a break, quote unquote, is because I just couldn't run a company and grow it and be scheduled 2 years in advance. Just,
Mm.
that's not just what people would say. Oh, can you attend this conference? I'm like, when is it? They're like, oh, it's not till next year. I'm like, oh, I'm booked. So, you can't really um, serve two masters. You have to like really focus on one or the other. But it really is. I find that there's a lot of creativity in it. What I'm what my team tells me now is I'm pouring all of that into our YouTube channel and our podcast and
Of
doing
course.
lots of writing and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and my teaching background comes into play
Your
too. So,
teaching comes into play, your performance abilities and background and confidence come into play, all of those things, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I see lots of synergy there.
The book you wrote, again, titled Sing with Your Opera Voice, My Journey from Solopreneur to Entrepreneur. You made that shift, obviously, when you first started doing that HR consulting work for this gentleman you're referring to, and then you had to turn that into a company. When you think back to that, what were some of the early challenges of transitioning from solopreneur to entrepreneur?
Well, I had a lot of corporate experience, so I had the benefit of kind of knowing what it takes to support a goodly sized endeavor. I knew what business structure looked like. I knew what budgets looked like. I knew all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're starting out in your second bedroom, it's really just you and your phone and your computer. And because I was, again, quote unquote, tricked into it, it is, and I think everyone goes through this, that no matter how committed you are, no matter how solid your vision is, you have a little bit of, and I think this is an overused phrase, but it applies here, imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
You're stepping into an environment that you know less about than you would like to. And you're going to be faced with challenges that you maybe haven't faced before. I faced challenges that I hadn't faced directly. I had seen them in the
Mm-hmm.
businesses that I'd been in, but they weren't my challenges. I was in the HR department. So, and entrepreneurs, you're the first salesperson. So that was a completely different jacket for me to put on. I'd never done sales before. So you really have to, and that's the whole thing about singing with your opera voice. The kind of very brief background of that title is that I had a voice teacher, and sometimes I would do a great job, and sometimes I would not do a great job. And every once in a while, when she would hear exactly what she wanted to hear, she would go, "What did you just do? We need to make you do that over and over again." And inevitably, it was a mind game for me. It was me
Mm,
thinking, "Oh, I'm going to sing with my interpretation of what an opera singer sings like."
I
And
see.
by doing that, my entire body, the breath and the control and all of that would click in because the mind is, really so strong. And so that's what it is about entrepreneurship. You have to step into the leadership role. You have to step into the business owner role and take it on fully, learn what you need to learn, be open to new ideas, be open to new input, get help, get support, get people around you who've been there, done that, so that they can support you and give you guidance. But you've got to know that you can do this thing, and you can. It's a mind over matter,
Agreed.
and so that's what the whole kind of premise of the book is about.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Beautifully said. I couldn't agree with you more. When you think back to now, when you thought there's no way I'm a number two, what was really the fear that was holding you back? Was it that fear of I've never done this before, I don't know that I can do it? Thinking back to what was it you think was holding you back for real?
Yeah, I think it was because it was something I had never considered. So it was a huge unknown to me. And I really
And you
didn't
could
even,
and you were you afraid to fail in that unknown or
I just didn't know if I wanted to do it. I
okay,
didn't know if I
okay.
wanted
You
to
didn't
have
even
that
know.
level of
Yeah.
accountability and
Oh,
responsibility. I feel a really strong responsibility for the families that
of
this
course.
business supports.
Hmm.
And so I didn't know, and I've been exposed to that in other startup environments.
Hmm.
I didn't know if I wanted to take all of that on. I didn't know if I could. And so, yes, there certainly would be there's some fear of
Hmm.
failure. There's still some fear of failure.
Sure, there
So,
always is. Yeah.
mhm.
You talked about the imposter syndrome. I feel it periodically. Everybody does. I think it's one of those things that we all go through. But like you expressed it very well said as to how it's very much a mindset. All right. Leading to that, shifting to becoming an entrepreneur, of course, is about building a team.
Mhm.
And specifically, you want to get your insights on high performance teams. I thought we'd start with your definition of a high performance team. What does that mean?
To me, a high performance team is, it's all the things that you think of when you think of the leader of the organization being able to lead and not be in the weeds. So you have people who are self-motivated, you have people who have a clear idea of what the vision is, and they have aligned behind the vision and the steps that it takes to complete that vision. They have a strong personal affinity for developing their career and their knowledge and their expertise, and for infusing that back into the organization. So a high performance team for me is, a third the team, a third the leader, and a third the environment that you as the leader help create. Because you can have high performing individuals in the wrong environment and you will not have a high performance team.
And is in the environment what we're doing, the product or the service that we're offering, is that part of environment or is that a separate thing?
To me, it's a bit of a separate thing, because the environment is, and I think, I tell people that if you don't focus on culture, quote unquote, you'll still have a culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just every environment has a culture.
Mhm.
So it just because you haven't labeled it that or you haven't paid attention to it doesn't mean that you don't have one. And it's the same thing. Culture is part of the environment,
Okay.
and that's kind of the same thing to me. If you don't actively create and shape that environment as the leader, create an environment where people aren't afraid to fail because it's going to be, make sure that they know it's a learning opportunity. Make sure, I'm kind of getting into the weeds here, but make sure that you are recognizing high performance and you're supporting folks who are struggling. Make sure that people who are non-performers, you can't have non-performers on a high performance team
Right.
for years on end. It will inevitably affect the rest of the team.
Absolutely.
So all of people being able to give you feedback freely, you supporting them as fully fledged human beings, not just their work life. And I'm not saying get involved in your team's personal life, but I'm saying understand and give them, if someone is having some, childcare problems or whatever the case may be, figure out how you can support them. Now, yes, you need people to work, you need them to accomplish the goals, you need them to do the job. But you also have to understand that there may be other stressors that are happening outside of the workplace that impacts their ability to be at their best.
Hmm.
So if you can put, and you don't have to do this on a one-off basis, you can put various programs in place, and now I'm very much sounding like an HR person, but you can put various programs in place that can support individuals. Something as simple as volunteering vacation time. So if
Mm.
someone is really struggling with, a health care crisis and they need additional time off, the team can support them by volunteering their vacation time.
Hmm.
Now, doing that is a very specific thing because there are tax
Right.
ramifications here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
those kinds of programs. So
Um, in my opinion, a high performance team can be the entire company, everybody in the company, in my business, especially when it's smaller. I'll ask you a follow up question on that. But also, of course, it can be a group that's performing something. Like, for example, I had the privilege of when I was in the corporate world, being part of a very high performance team in the sales team that I was in a particular office in Dallas, and we were responsible for a region. And for a period of 2 years or so, we had a very high performing team within the company at large. So I'm assuming it can apply at all levels. It can be the entire company, or it could be a subset or a group that's a high performance team, correct?
absolutely. And if you're very lucky, it's the whole company, but
Right.
most
If
of
you're
the
lucky,
time,
it's not.
yeah,
Yeah.
most of the time it is a smaller
When we're
subset.
small, like you've been in a startup, I've been in a startup, usually, especially if you've got a good leader, which it sounds like you did despite the failure. Um, I suspect at that point, when you're under 100 employees, you're trying to build everybody's a high performer, right? But in my experience, I'm curious to see yours, just go off on a tangent for a moment, that's one of the challenges that larger corporations have is at some point, there's no way you have everybody on a high performance team. So you have to have these individual groups that are high performing teams. Is that fair?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Used to call it back even before us the skunk works, right? So they would take a group of people and work on a special project or the
Hmm.
Manhattan Project or whatever, those kind of things. Okay, so we've got an understanding. You've shared the foundational elements. Again, like you said, third team, a third of it is the leader, a third of it is the environment. Those are some of the key things. If we think about it now from the life cycle of an employee, what are some of the things you see that work well to attract high performers to join your team?
And I do have an answer for that. But before I get to that, I do want to this may be an unpopular opinion. I think that just as it's critically important to have high performers on your team, it is also critically important to have less sparkle, solid performers. Sometimes you will have someone who does their job, they come in every day, they do it well, you can count on them, they're detailed, they do a very good job, but they're not a superstar. Everybody can't be LeBron James. So
But they're
it's,
consistent and
mhm,
they're part of, you're arguing that those people are a part of a high performance team.
that's exactly right. And I think they're a valuable part because there is value in folks who just, look straight ahead and get the job
Get the
done.
work done.
Not,
Is
mhm,
it partly because as a high performer comes with it all kinds of things, including an ego, including wanting what's next, including like I have found that high performance teams don't last forever. They have a
mhm,
life to them.
mhm,
And part of it is because, if we analogize it to sports, we just had the Super Bowl, the coaches have already started to get job offers, right? To go to other high performing teams. The players will get offered big contracts elsewhere. So you have these forces that apply to high performance team has been my experience. And so high performance teams come and go and you keep building them over and over. Do you agree with that that's the way it works?
I absolutely do, and I think that the complexion of the high performance team, changes. People come, people go. Their motivation, they may stay, but their motivation changes, or their stage of life changes.
Hmm.
All sorts of things can impact that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's fluid,
It's fluid.
and so
That's the way
if
to
you're
put it. Yeah.
exactly, so when you're talking about having a high performance team, you certainly want a high performance organization. What the individual components of that look like will change. And so as leaders, we need to understand that and be ready for that and be able to adapt to that.
But your point is that an organization or a team made up of exclusively, A-level high performers, that doesn't always work very well. You need stabilizers, people who are going to get the work done, are more consistent, are probably going to be there a little longer term. Is that what I'm understanding?
Exactly, exactly. Because one of the hallmarks of high performance individuals is that and I will say we, because entrepreneurs tend to be high performers, we are always reaching for the
Mm,
next thing. We are
exactly.
always expanding our horizons. We're visionaries. We're looking 14 steps ahead. That is fantastic. But you need people who are looking at today and focused on, I got to get that report done this afternoon. And yes, oftentimes, there are egos involved. High
Mm,
performers do have a strong sense of self,
right.
typically. And so that can come into play as well. But all of that can be managed.
Hmm.
But it's not going to be a situation of stasis. It's definitely going to be fluid. It's definitely going to morph. And that's part of what makes our jobs as leaders so dynamic. We have to understand that, be ready for it, and be able to engage however that change shows up.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so let's go back to how do I attract high performers?
So, to attract high performers, the thing that I say all the time is recruiting is a marketing exercise. And if you don't understand it's a marketing exercise, you're doing it wrong. Yes, you want high performers to be attracted to you. You want folks who are not who you're looking for to self select out. But in order to do that, you have to make yourself attractive. So, a job posting is not a job description. two completely different documents. They have two completely different purposes. A job description is something that a person like me absolutely loves, because if you get in any legal hot water, you'll be able to whip out your job description. These are the primary responsibilities of the job. These are the critical functions. This is, she can't do this according to the doctor's report, so we put her in this job, and all of those kinds of things. So that's what a job description is. And it also helps in performance reviews and things like that, to have a
Right.
lot of clarity around the expectations of the job. A job posting is really an advertisement. You are saying, we are wonderful and we want people who are wonderful, and we will make you more wonderful. We will give you opportunities to grow and develop and meet other wonderful people, and you'll do wonderful projects and it'll be wonderful. That's what you're doing. So, in order to do that, if you're just throwing a job description in a posting, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
So that's
And nowadays with the more limited pool, right? The constraints that are there just because there aren't as many people available to work. There are not
mhm.
enough workers. That's the only way you're going to attract the high performers, is that's what they're looking for, right?
That's exactly right.
And that's a
So,
shift, for an old guy like me, that was a shift that I had to learn. I mean, really been 5, 10 years now, but it used to be that you did just post, here are the duties, and
mhm.
you're going to prove to me that you are a fit. It had shifted. We have to show each other what the value is now. I have to sell you on why this is a great place for you to bring your talents. And now, of course, I'm going to validate that you have the skills and the experience I'm looking for. But that is such a big thing. And I really think, tell me what you think, that it's a mindset shift, especially for older business owners like myself, who come from that mentality as, you prove to me why I should hire you. That has shifted for all kinds of good reasons, by the way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
And that is the mindset change that I had to embrace, because, I come from the land of, if you're very lucky, you get the job. You get
Right.
hazed in the job for the first 4 years, because everybody gets hazed in the job. And then if you make it through, then you haze the next person that comes along.
That's right. You pass
So,
it on.
right, exactly. So, and you said something critically important there. You said that we have to prove to each other. And that's the right perspective. It's not that you have to prove to me that you're the right person for the job, or I have to prove to you that this is the right job for you. We actually are entering into a conversation, and
Mhm.
we have to support one another as the employer and the candidate, to say, this is what is possible. This is what I bring to the table. Does that have resonance for you? And that's a different kind of environment and mindset, certainly for me. I am a proud baby boomer. So I will absolutely say that that's the kind of thing that that just was not the world
No,
that
no.
I entered into when I first started working.
Yeah.
So that certainly is a mindset shift. But that's what goes back to the whole marketing piece.
Hmm.
Think of it as the same way you market your business to a
Yeah.
potential client, you're going to be marketing it to candidates. And you want candidates who have resonance with what you're talking about to self select in, and the ones who don't to self select out. So, some of the specific techniques that I look at, you want your posting to stand out. You want your opportunity to stand out from the sea of opportunities that are on Indeed and LinkedIn and Career Builder, and
Yeah.
on and on and on. And so, why not talk about things like, yes, you want to put the skills in there that you're looking for. You want to
Sure.
put down the critical functions of what you need in the job. But how about a day, putting in a little day in the life? This is what
Mhm.
little storytelling. This is what the job is going to look like. I'm a big fan of video. If you can do a link to
Mm.
the a video of the hiring manager saying, "This is what I look for in my department," and this is the example of some successful, team members that we've had. There is nothing better than a candidate being able to actually see and hear the hiring manager and getting a flavor for who they are and how they communicate and what they are looking for. And
Love
the
that.
same with other team members. Why not have team testimonials? You get clients by testimonials. Why not get candidates by testimonials? So, again, if your career page doesn't have anything on it, or your posting doesn't lead to somewhere where there is a testimonial from a team member or a few team members, This is what is great about my job. This is why I love this company. That kind of thing, it goes a long way.
Yeah. And somebody, and I would argue, well, nobody's reading it anyway. Nobody will spend the time, but the right person will.
Hmm.
And the right person will connect with that and say, that's the kind of environment I want to go work for.
Exactly. And if
And
you're
that's how
doing
I
good,
attract them.
absolutely. And if you're doing good out there in the world, say so. Don't, don't hide your shine. If you are contributing to nonprofit organizations, or you have Habitat for Humanity Day every year, or whatever the case may be, make sure that you're trumpeting that. Maybe it's not in every posting, but your career page is your calling card. So that should really give a flavor of how you look at your team members, what you feel is valuable
Yeah.
for them, how you support them. And then, of course, there's the whole development thing, but that's after
Yeah.
they actually get in the door.
All right. We'll wrap up this section here with this question. What's one or two things succinctly that that turns off high performers, that causes them to leave and look for something else? What are some of those top things that you see, mistakes that we make as small business owners, and in particular, that causes us to lose our high performers?
Not delegating and micromanaging.
Because those things, what they say to a high performer is, I don't trust you. I don't believe in
Hmm.
your skills. I don't value you. I'm not willing to empower you to do what you are capable of doing.
That's exactly
A high
right.
performer takes that as an insult, not to
Hmm.
mention that I'm not going to keep growing here.
They're sure they're not going to keep growing. And I think of the two things, the micromanaging is actually the worst of the
Worse.
two,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the micromanaging really does say, I've given you this task, I've given you this project, but I don't trust that you
Mhm.
have the skills or the intuition or the judgment or the abilities to carry it out. So I'm going to be sitting on your head every step of the way. That drives high performers insane.
Insane. Yeah. It's what drives a lot of high performers to start their own business. But,
Hmm.
it comes from that mentality, I think, in part, having been guilty of it myself at times, thinking that the only way it can be done right is if I do it my way. What you find once you embrace this and realize that if you hired the right person, they may not do it exactly the right way, but what will surprise you is they might actually figure out a better way to do it.
That's exactly right. And that goes directly into the delegation thing. Because the reason we don't delegate is because, well, there are lots of reasons we don't delegate, but one of the prime reasons is because, well, you did it, but that's not the way I do it. Now, you may have a perfectly good reason for doing it the way you do it. And if that's so, communicate that, because that's
Exactly.
another thing
Yeah.
about high performers.
Yeah.
The more information they have, they need to understand.
Mhm.
Just giving an instruction and saying, because I said so, that does not work with high performers. It actually doesn't work with good, solid team members, period.
Right. Right.
Explain yourself, explain the why, because again, they may come up with a better mousetrap. They may come up with a better idea. And knowing the why behind why you're doing something the way that you're doing it helps them as they're thinking about, okay, well, we can do it that way, but why not add this particular bell or that particular whistle?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you really have to be, and it takes time to be clear like that.
Yeah. It
But
does.
as you know, that's one of the hallmarks of a good leader.
Yeah. And it is, I think this is one of the keys to transitioning from solopreneur to entrepreneur. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a painful key, but yes, it
Yeah. Painful
is.
key. Yeah. All right. Let's talk more about, we've touched on it, but give us the highlights of the services that Idomeneo provides. What do you provide for your client now? And also tell us what's an ideal client look like for you.
Sure. Well, and thank you for asking. So the services that we provide we're basically an HR department. So for our client, we are their HR department. We just don't sit in their offices. So we do everything in the employee life cycle, from onboarding, new hire, people going on pregnancy leaves, promotions, all of that, benefits administration, payroll administration, training and development. So we do all of that. We work very closely with our clients. Our goal, kind of our underlying core principle, is that we want to develop managers. That's really what we're focused on, because the impression that your employee has of your company is almost 100% tied up in their impression of their manager. That's
Hmm.
who they're dealing with every day. That's the person that's giving them the company, the company policy is this, or we're going to do that, or we're going to do it this way. All of that comes from the manager. And managers most often are promoted into a managerial role because they were very, very good at the job, which is terrific. But managing is a different job. It's a different
Right.
muscle. It's a different, if you take a marathon runner and you tell them, I want you to do some heavy lifting, those two things don't go together.
Right.
So they have to train. Both of those disciplines require training. So training a manager to be able to, your job no longer is to do the job, do the task. Your job is to motivate others
Hmm.
to excel at the task. That's a different set of muscles. So giving them the growth opportunity and the support and the development to become better managers, that's really where we're focused. And
Okay.
then by the same token, we then do that with the business owner and the CEO and CFO, et cetera, help them become better leaders, in addition to all of the administrivia. So yes, we will process the payroll and we will process the benefits enrollment, and we will do all of those things.
Got it. And I believe you've got a free download for our listeners. Tell us about that, if you would.
Absolutely. It's a quick overview, quick checklist, because we're also about doing things quickly, because this all came out of my brain. And the one thing I don't have is time. Building a company, and, no business owner has tons of free time.
Right.
So we want to make sure that you get exactly what you need, exactly when in the moment that you need it. So this is a quick overview of what kinds of things to look for when you're putting together an onboarding process. If you're unfortunately terminating someone, what are the high points that you need to be aware of, things like that. So we have a little booklet that hopefully will be helpful.
And where do I find that?
And you can find it at vickybrownhr.com/podcast gift.
Excellent. And if you're not where you can write that down, I'll have that link in the show notes page for this episode. So just search for Vicky Brown at thehowofbusiness.com and you can find that link as well to get that free download. All right, excellent. Book. We mentioned your book. We've been chatting about some of the content in that book. Again, that book that Vicky Brown wrote is Sing It with Your Opera Voice, My Journey from Solopreneur to Entrepreneur. And is there another book that comes to mind or you've read recently or are reading that you would recommend?
I'm currently reading and implementing, actually, Ryan Deiss's Scaling. And I love that book. And so I highly recommend it to others because, again, as we said, I love process, I love organization,
Right.
and it really is a wonderful guide to help you set up a process for running your business.
Wonderful. Thanks for that recommendation. All right, let's wrap it up, Vicky. What's one thing you want us to take away from the conversation that we've had about high performance teams, building them, maintaining them, attracting them? What would be one key thing you would have us take away from this conversation on high performance teams?
My key would be to the entrepreneurs and the business owners out there. Sometimes it feels like when you say things like don't micromanage and you have to delegate and things of that nature, it feels like, okay, this is something I have to learn to do. It's not an
Mm,
easy thing, it doesn't come naturally to me, but I have to alter my behavior to get there. And that is not necessarily untrue, but there is another way to think of it. If I'm having a bad day, surprising, but it does happen. If I'm having a bad day, when I go into the office and I just hear the team members collaborating with one another, working with clients, working on projects, it gives me such a
mm,
feeling of joy. I stand on their shoulders. The whole company would not exist if it weren't for them. The joy, I keep using the word joy, but the joy that comes from that, that's what you will get if you bring in high performers, solid performers, give them the tools. I think my job is to give them the tools that they need to do their jobs, to expand their jobs, and to grow their careers. That's my job. If you do that as a business owner, you will get tremendous, tremendous valuable feedback and valuable support from that team. And I can't really describe it, but it puts a smile on my face, makes me feel immeasurably better, certainly makes me feel proud of every single one of them. I feel like the mama hen, really. And so understand that there are things, there are pieces in there that will bring you great joy. It's not all about just altering who you are and what your natural proclivities are. It really is, if you do it and you do it consistently and you do the best you can, you don't have to be perfect. Just do the best you can. You will grow a team and an environment that will not only grow the business, but will grow you as an individual.
Well said. Well said. Couldn't agree with you more. And I understand the feeling that you're describing. And the opposite of it is getting to a point, 5 years into your business, 10 years into your business, and you dread going in every day or dealing with it. And that's usually because you haven't allowed anybody else to help you. You have to make all the decisions. You have to be the one that makes the big decisions. You have to do it or it can't be done right. All of those things will wear you down. And then all you've got is a lower paying job that you're miserable with than when you left, perhaps, instead of being an entrepreneur and leading others to work collaboratively to build something. That is the key difference. So thanks for sharing that perspective. Tell us where you'd like us to go again to learn more about you and about your business.
All roads lead from VickyBrownHR.com. So you can do that, and it'll have links certainly to other services and the other things that we provide. But figured Vicky Brown HR was probably easier than making everybody spell Idomeneo.
Exactly. Great story and a great brand, but you want to provide access and people be able to find you online. So perfect. We'll have a link to that as well, like I said before, and the link to download the free download at the show notes page for this episode. Vicky, great conversation. Thanks so much for sharing your incredible and inspiring entrepreneurial journey and your thoughts on High Performance Team. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
This is Henry Lopez, and thanks to all of you for joining us on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today again is Vicky Brown. I release new episodes every Monday morning, and you can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including on my YouTube channel, thehowofbusiness.com, the How of Business YouTube channel, rather, and on my website. You can also listen there at thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.